the fuck is that guy?
Welcome in, everybody. Joe Quills here with you tonight. It is Tuesday. We're back on Tuesday because we had a couple of cancellations over the last couple of weeks with weather and all that. And I kind of explained it last night because, part of the reason why is, well, and some beyond what I was saying last night. Part of it is I just feel like I'm due for a power outage because it's been a while. It's been a couple of years, I think. So I would think it would be that. And then on top of that, you got the window right next to me. So even though I shrank the scope of the video, the whatever you want to call it, because sometimes words are hard. And that's what she said. A lot of times, if you have thunderstorms, and also these walls are pretty thin too. I mean, you can hear cars going up and down the street and all that. I mean, it's not the greatest place to record a podcast, even if I were to do podcasts the way that they were meant to be, which is audio only. But I just feel like a lot of what I've done, a lot of everything that you hear, you don't hear on other podcasts. So, but I am aware of that. It's just being in an apartment in Philadelphia, even though this area of the city is a little bit better than other parts, but not gonna lie, the sketchiness is moving toward my area little by little. But yeah, so and you also get the lightning, all that, and that would be a little distracting to you guys. So a little bit of everything why we cancel on Tuesday. Thursday, I told Mike basically, didn't feel like doing it. But we'll definitely do it on Thursday because we got a big weekend ahead of us. We had the Hamiltonian on Saturday, which we're not really going to cover too much, but that's this weekend at the Meadowlands. We have a big race day on Saturday that we're going to cover on Also Eligible. I mean, it's so big that AJ is going to join me. But this week we're going to have racing from Saratoga, and the Saratoga Derby, the Test Stakes, the 4-Star Dave, and the Whitney. 4 races. Wait, how many? And on those 4 races, the 4-Star Dave and the Whitney are winning your in races. So, like I said a couple of weeks ago on Also Eligible, I'm going to try to cover as many of those winning your in races in North America as possible. So those 2 are what we're looking at here. And already got the month of August finished up. It's almost time for a new schedule, but I'm in wait and see mode because a couple of my sources that I use haven't updated. But I kind of know a couple of the weekends, like for example, September 19th is going to be Park. So, but we'll get everything ready to go here on this Tuesday night here. We'll talk about the gambling side of the effect of the MLB trade deadline passing, some trends there, and also some liabilities are being mentioned in the article here. Brock Lesnar announced he officially retired today. I'll give thoughts on that in a general scope, not, it's pro wrestling, blah, blah, blah. He did a lot more than that. I mean, he also got himself into trouble, but I'll make a vague reference to that as well because I don't know the whole story behind it. And I might have said this on the show, I might not have. I needed more time to digest it because of the fact that since I am the horse racing guy of the Q&A Racing, Q&A Sports Zone, I just didn't know what I wanted to do with. I wanted to read the Churchill Downs NYRA series that they're going to have starting next year. So we'll take a look at that. Um, I'll give my thoughts on that, but as you know already, my initial thought was, oh, no more Triple Crown. But we'll get into that here in a little bit. Um, so just want to let you guys know, I have been teasing for months that I'm going to be gaming soon. Now, the gaming portion will be exclusively on my Twitch page, twitch.tv/JoeQuills. I will tell you right now, I did some testing this afternoon, and my testing kind of got a little bit derailed near the end of the 2-hour test I had because AJ called me, and I'm not going to blame him for that because, things happen, and I know like during these game sessions that something like that will happen. So I think the game does not like the Dodgers because I started a brand new game from scratch, started the 2026 season, just had to do one quick change because they had one guy in the majors who was in the majors at the start of the year because I had the list of starter, the 26-man roster. So as I'm pushing ahead the first couple of weeks, and I'm kind of looking because even though the game has GM goals or owner goals, and one of the goals is to improve center field. Okay. So one goal that I have that the game doesn't have towards me is I want to improve the bullpen because I've seen in real life how shitty the bullpen can be from time to time. So as I'm pushing ahead, and this is like March 10th on the game because because it's so far in the preseason, and there's no exhibition season in the first season of Out of Park Baseball. They start you like beginning of March, about 2.5 weeks before the season starts. So I went to start the game, and I did one after I figured out the roster the way it should be and all that. I went and I put, moved one guy to the minor. Well, I had to waive and designate him for assignment, and then I had to bring the guy up. When I did that, I noticed that Shohei Ohtani got hurt in the World Baseball Classic because, if you remember, the World Baseball Classic is this year, and Out of the Park Baseball does allow that. Well, on the game, Shohei Ohtani is already out for the year with Tommy John surgery. So if that elbow surgery he had a couple of years ago is considered Tommy John, because I think he had like a brace put on his elbow or whatever they do with that, because the Angels were pretty secretive about that because I think it was the end of the Dodgers when the last year with the Angels that he hurt his elbow, I believe. And they were very, very secretive. They didn't really say what exactly he did. I mean, they did say elbow surgery, but some said full Tommy John. Some said it was just a brace, whatever. Whatever happened. But in the game, if you count each time as a Tommy John surgery, I believe this is his third Tommy John surgery. Let me just double check that here. See if he did have that twice. He had surgery in 2018. got it in 2018, and he had a revision procedure with an internal brace in the final month with the team, final year with the Angels in September 2023. So he's had that surgery twice. Now in the game, he's getting it a third time. So it's like, but the Dodgers are loaded. But interesting that first thing I see on the game of any notice is Shohei Ohtani's out for the year. So, but and I'm not wishing injury on anybody, but it's kind of ironic that Shohei Ohtani is kind of hurt right now. I think he has a knee injury, and if you're a Dodgers fan and you know which knee it is, let me know, because either way, it's not good for him to have a knee injury, because if it's the right leg, it's the leg that he uses to drive off the mound. If it's the left leg, it's the leg that he drives to hit. So, I mean, I didn't see which knee it was he hurt, but he's not pitching. So if he's not pitching, I'm thinking it's the right knee. But also it could be the left knee because it's the constant pounding on the ground. But that was an interesting thing that came up yesterday, or it came up this afternoon while I was setting things up and starting the game itself. So, but if I do end up doing Out of the Park very soon, which I probably will, 2 hours is about 6 games worth if I do straight through. And but yeah, so it is interesting that occurred, but I was doing some testing, and because what I want to do is when I do these streams, because I have a different save set up as well, and what I want to do is the promotion relegation I told Mike about last night, and also a Philly save. But the Philly save I have right now is a Philly save that I'm doing offline. So, but yeah, so, and I think what I want to do is when I get this all started, I'm probably going to do a week for a stream. So, like for example, one guy that I follow, and he's the one I start getting drops from in the morning from Out of the Park Baseball, Sean Curtis. He plays the same way I do, which is like a little bit of micromanaging, but he plays like 2 weeks a day because he does 4 to 5 hours. So, but so as long as there isn't extra innings or a real crazy game where you have a ton of scoring, you probably have about a 20 to 25 minute game. So, so just give you an idea of what's going to go ahead with additional streaming, because I do have some things that I've been pondering as well. So, but but I found that interesting that, oh, by the way, Shohei's out for the year already. But we do have the segue to real life baseball, and the Dodgers are even stronger favorites on your favorite sports book. It used to be you could just say Vegas. I mean, I guess you could say Vegas, but you got DraftKings, you got BetMGM mentioned in here, you got a few others. I use a lot of FanDuel, but you have these different books. And the one thing I would tell you guys as well, always bet within your means. You know the whole deal that I say. You got a game like Probably 100 Gambler. But there was an interesting article that I found on ESPN today, and the Dodgers Now this is according to DraftKings because ESPN has a partnership with DraftKings. So immediately following the acquisition of Tarek Skubal on Saturday, the Angels moved from plus 190 to plus 150 to win the World Series, though the number has since lengthened slightly to plus 160 as of midday today. So you are looking at a heavy favorite right now. But the problem is you do have to play the games, and it's an embarrassment of riches that they have because they keep trading and buying and all that, and it's like again, but but they are way ahead of the next closest team on the World Series odds board, which is the Yankees at plus 600. And you got teams that are pretty much eliminated, but you got to leave them on the board until they're officially eliminated. But the Mets have been eliminated since day one. But according to the article here, bettors are buying into the seeming inevitability of a third straight championship for the Dodgers. Since Saturday, the Dodgers have garnered the most tickets and handle to win the World Series on multiple sports books. So a lot of people are betting it, but you got to bet a ton of money to win a ton of money. So but a lot of times betting a team to win the World Series, you want to do it November, December, or if we do have a work stoppage, which is pretty much inevitable, you're probably going to have I usually like to do it early on, but like for example, my Sixers wager, I'm glad I did it on July 1st, moments after the trade for Jaylen Brown was made, because the Sixers are now like plus 800, plus 900. When you see plus 22, plus 25 on July 1st, yeah, I'm going to hop on that because I felt the Sixers had a chance even without LeBron. But but Vegas, and all the virtual sports books, if you want to call them virtual, they're all rooting for the Dodgers to lose, because guess what? All that money that they made, especially since Saturday, will have to be distributed to other teams or to other wagers. It's just like, in a way, it's like horse racing, where I try to explain, like, if you see a bridge jumper, if you have a couple of bridge jumpers betting the show pool or the place pool with thousands upon hundreds of thousands of dollars, go in the opposite direction, pick a horse that you think will finish in the top 2 or 3, because let's say your horse, that heavy favorite, does not come in, that wager which you're expecting 210 or 220 on, if the favorite finishes in the top 3, ends up paying 20, 30, 50. I've gone as high. The first time I tried doing something like this, I ended up getting $126 or something like that. And it was tax free because $20 is $1,200, and it was only whatever. But right now, the Dodgers are sitting at a historically short World Series price for this time of the year, early August. And, even though, what's their record right now? I need to see one thing here. And my parlay didn't come in. Okay. But Dodgers and Cubs are 1-1 in the sixth right now, by the way. So the Dodgers right now are 69 and 44. 69? Nice. So that is 113. So they're on pace for 99 wins. The thing is, they showed last year you don't want to face them in the playoffs. And that's what happened to the Phillies. They got the wrong team at the wrong time. But the Dodgers now, because they've had a couple of years where they've had 100, 105, 110 wins, they ended up meeting San Diego one year. They lost to another team another year. Might even been San Diego again. I don't remember off the top of my head, but they were losing in the first round of the playoffs. So they're just looking to A, win the division, and probably B, get home field. But, like, for example, I said to one of my friends, chairman of the board, on his stream one night, he goes, I thought, your Phillies caught up, and then they fell back a little bit. I think having Washington in town helps, but I said I'd rather be in one of those wild card rounds because, like, for example, Mike mentioned as well, the two times we went to the NLCS this decade, and I shouldn't say we, the Phillies were a wild card team. We're in the wild card round. They're actually they were a wild card team both years. Because the Braves won the division both years. Because in 2023, the Braves won 104 games and won by 14, and the Phillies beat them in the divisional round. 2022, Mets won 101, Braves won 101. Mets had to play in the wild card round. They lost. The Phillies were a wild card team, and they ended up going to the World Series. But I will say this. This is probably one of the first years that, this is a year where we have an insanely strong favorite here, and rightfully so. They've won 2 in a row. They've won 2 World Series in a row. And they just keep buying and buying. I mean, the thing is, even though they're kind of let's say what it is. The luxury tax in baseball is kind of sort of a salary cap, but it's really not. So you're looking at a team that just doesn't care about the luxury tax. Oh, you want me to continue and just continue to, I also cite the regional sports networks going the way of the dinosaur. That's causing a lot of problems as well because, you're expecting $50 million a year for this agreement. Now you're only getting 5 through a streaming service that you're using. So, but you have you have the haves and have-nots, and it was really weird that Pittsburgh, who would get to this point of the year and start selling, they're actually buying. They're trying to get into the race. So But Dodgers are rightfully so the heavy favorite because they just keep getting stronger and stronger with their roster, and it in a way it looks like a wild card. I mean, it looks like an all-star team. I mean, it's kind of like it's a video game team where, yeah, I'm gonna put this guy on my team and this guy and this guy. That's what it's like. It's like you have pretty much a superstar at every position. But you know, they're plus 160 right now. They went from 190 to 150, but they bumped up to 160 today, as of today, I should say. But um, now, Caesar Sportsbook head of baseball Eric Biggio notes, not only in the futures but on a day-to-day basis, the Dodgers have the most tickets written on them, and rightfully so. I mean, whether it's parlays, single game wager, whatever you're talking about here, you've got a top team playing every every opportunity they can. So, um, but but yeah. So a lot of what you see now is just there's just nothing really. I mean, if you're betting futures, you can bet the Dodgers, but the return of investment isn't there for me. That's what I will say. I just don't like the return of investment. So there's that. But I also think, I mean, there's money to be had if you really want to take a chance, but, do you really want to? Um, um, Now, DraftKings Sportsbook director Johnny Avello said, even with the Dodgers sitting at a historically short World Series price for early August, they've been the most popular team among bettors since acquiring Tarek Skubal. Normally, odds as short can cool betting activity, but the Dodgers' combination of star power, depth, and another blockbuster addition has only generated more interest from bettors. But you know what? You can get a ton of money if you think that your team can beat the Dodgers. That's what I would say. So, now Chris Cipollini, who's with BetMGM, he's the senior trading manager. He said that the Dodgers are not currently a liability for the sports book, but that can change. And if you think about it, yeah, they are going to be. And the Penguin is here. And yeah, I agree with that as well. And I apologize for not seeing that right away. I did not have that screen up because if you saw all my screens going right now, But I'll tell you what, the Dodgers, they're loaded. I mean, there's nothing you can do, and it's just screaming more and more that we have to have a salary cap in baseball. Me, I don't believe in it. I don't think the salary cap will do much. And Penguin makes a great point here. Makes baseball not cool to watch. Well, it's not cool to watch when the same team is fighting for a championship and nobody else is. Let me do this. The new LA Yankees. Yeah, that's a great point there. The LA Yankees. So, but if you're somebody who bets in those markets, you may get a better price on some teams now. The Brewers, the Phillies, Chicago White Sox, even though they were 400 to 1 at the start of the year. We'll get into that in a second. But the only other National League team getting any kind of love from bettors around the deadline for the championship and the pennant are the Brewers and the Phillies. I didn't touch the Phillies. But but forgive me, I'm trying to do some things here. So those two teams both racked up 8.9% of the handle to win the NL at BetMGM since Saturday, with the Brewers also attracting some big money in the World Series market. On deadline day, Milwaukee went from plus 900 to plus 950, and Philly dropped from 20 to 1 to 18 to 1. And screw your answer backs. So now in the American League, everybody's hopping on the Boston Red Sox. Me personally, I'm thinking they've got to cool off at some point. And maybe it's not until mid-September. But, it's kind of like the one betting angle that I have in baseball. Oh, why are you betting against the Red Sox? They've won 14, 15 in a row. They're due to lose one. Why are you betting? Like, for example, last week, I forgot to put it in. I wish I did. Oh, why are you betting against the Marlins when they had a 12-game losing streak, especially against the Phillies? My answer would have been, if I had played it, because they're due to win. I never want to see my team losing 10, 12 in a row. Plain and simple. But I was impressed with the Phillies tonight. Now, granted, you got what's basically a AAA team now in Washington. But Luis Ariz, now everybody's saying, oh, he should be the leadoff guy. I'm like, yeah, but it's just like, let me see where they put him in the lineup. They put him fourth. Now, you can tell baseball isn't what it used to be because it's not about the home run guy, even though it's all about home runs. But, they're putting the home run guys at 1 and 2. Like they had Schwarber leading off tonight. And they had Ariz in the fourth spot. But the one thing is, Luis Ariz, first 2 at-bats, brought in 3 runs. He brought in a run on a single, and he brought 2 runs on a double. So, the only thing is, Luis Ariz said, if you're going to trade me, I'm only playing second base. Phillies obliged. Bryson Stott goes to third. Bryce Harper went back to right field. Alec Boehm went from third to first, and but it was interesting tonight, and we'll see a lot more over the next month and a half until the end of the season. Now, The Red Sox was one of the biggest odd movers and most popular futures picks at the deadline. They attracted the second most World Series handle at DraftKings, and the most AL pennant handle at BetMGM. Their title odds were 150 to 1 earlier in the summer, probably right about when the streak started. After deadline day, they're down to 15 to 1. They entered the day yesterday at 17 to 1 and were 151 earlier in the summer. Johnny Avello noted the significant interest in Boston between the hot play and the big transactions. Biagio from Caesars noted that the moves Caesars had to make on the Red Sox, but did not list them as a liability with the sportsbook. Now, the one liability that they're seeing right now is the Chicago White Sox. They're not going away. I mean, they lost tonight, I think, but I was trying to take advantage of a FanDuel promotion where, if your team's up 2 runs, you win. And I'm glad I did because I had the Athletics tonight. They got a quick 3-0 lead. I cashed the winner, and Boston ended up winning the game 5-4. But so the White Sox are the largest caution. White Sox opened up at 400 to 1 to win the World Series. They're also a liability at BetMGM. At DraftKings, the White Sox are 30 to 1, improving from 40 to 1 a week prior. So they've rocketed up those standings when it comes to that. And they're beating the hell out of the White Sox tonight, 14 to 2. So another team that's notably improved their standing with bookmakers and bettors are the Astros. They didn't make the loudest moves. They did get Dalton Varsho from Toronto, but they went from 35 to 1 to 22 to 1 in a span of a week. And a week and a half prior to that, they were 60 to 1. So a lot of interesting things there. But, like Penguin said on YouTube, F the Dodgers. But that's why you play these series, because sometimes you end up like the last 2 years. Well, last year the Phillies lost to the Dodgers, which should have been an LCS matchup, but it ended up being a divisional matchup. 2 years ago, they lost to the Mets, divisional rival. So, it is what it is. But the point is, anything can happen in a 3-game series, which the Dodgers will probably avoid, and also a 5-game series, which we saw last season with the Phillies, especially when Orion Kirkring panicked and hit the bull throwing home when all he had to do was go to first and send it to the 12th or 13th inning. But yeah, so that is everything when it comes to Major League Baseball and post trade deadline. So you're not going to see much movement between now and you'll probably see some movement, like this team is this close from being eliminated or something like that, but or if there's a major injury, like maybe 2 or 3 Dodgers starters go out for the season, but the Dodgers are so loaded that they can make up for that. It's just that other teams cannot right now, and especially the Phillies right now. But that's why they play the games on the field and not on paper, because if it was on paper, the Dodgers would have probably won 10 in a row right now. not just 3, or not just 2 and on their way to a third. But that's the story with that right now. So, and you know, um, but I will tell you one thing. I kind of having fun with Luis Arise with the Phillies the last couple of nights, because last night I used his last name and said Arise and the chances of a work stoppage. Well, tonight I said on my personal Facebook and on X, 1 base hit, and I already have a rising in my pants. Bump. And I will stop with the Arise jokes because, I'm trying to be professional here, but, sometimes you got to joke around. Like I was saying to AJ tonight, or this afternoon when he called me, because we were talking horse racing stuff, because, he was like, well, can I hop on the show, Saturday? Yeah, sure. I don't have a problem with that. Like the one thing I told him, I said, when I was when I was at Monmouth Park back in June, they do the prediction show that the track announcer Matt Ditterman was doing. It was right next to the paddock area. And I got there early enough so that I can see what's going on, because it was the first time I was there. AJ got somebody to take some pictures for him. So a lot of what we were doing was stuff that was important for our brand, QARacing.com. So since I spent a couple of nights in Rahway, I said, I'm going to get there early enough where I can get a feel for Monmouth, because I've never been there before June. And I was saying to AJ, because I wanted to maybe work in occasionally, because I kind of want to, like, one of the things we talked about is possibly another horse racing show. So the one thing I wanted to say to AJ, the one thing I said to AJ tonight is, like I told him about, like, for example, this week's graphic for Also Eligible. And I said I also have a 9x16 that I make every week, which ends up going on my personal Instagram in the Insta stories. At least with the Insta stories, I can see who's looking at it. So when I look at it, like, for example, I looked on Saturday, Matt Ditterman looked at it, Gino Piccola looked at it, Jessica Paquette, Ashley Wood, who works with promoting Pennsylvania's horse racing tracks and racing in general. There may have been another 1 or 2 people that are horse racing related. So the one thing I wanted to say to Matt Ditterman, hey Matt, I'm Joe Quills on Instagram, and I want to apologize for like my sick humor here and there, because I said to AJ tonight, every time I turn around, Matt Ditterman, Jessica Paquette, and a few others, and the one thing they'll probably say to me, like, one thing I would recommend is be more professional, but, I kind of joke around and, I try to use it as a comedic thing as well. Well, turns out they always seem to find the fart joke or the blurred edge of, is this insensitive or something like that, like a little adult humor here and there, but sometimes, you get the idea. So But but I said to AJ, it just seems like every time I do something like that, it happens. But I do have a 9x16 that I've set up for Friday's show, or for Friday when I promote it on Instagram. But um, but yeah, so I I'm and also I can see who looks, because if I get a couple more people looking than the previous week, then that's a good sign to me. Because I mean, with this type of a show, the the interest doesn't really time out as much. And I know if Penguin AZ is still here, he knows that he can use stuff against me from going to YouTube and saying, "Hey, look at this," But I will say that if I can get a couple more people to look each week at my Insta stories, and they see, oh, this is professional. And up there's the fart joke, but seriously, I'd like to, you know, I try to keep things professional, but you gotta lighten up the mood every once in a while. But um, so so I did mention that, and AJ's going to be on Saturday, barring anything unforeseen. I always say that no matter who it is, because things happen in life. So, but um, but I saw this today, and I saw it earlier in the day. I didn't see it live, but the one thing about Pat McAfee is he is a wrestling fan. He also has a show, and people are saying, "Oh, Pat McAfee's helped kill ESPN," because it seems like, from what I've seen over the last couple of days, ESPN may be getting away from embracing debate finally. I don't know what exactly that means. I didn't read the article, but he had Brock Lesnar on the show today. And I know some people are going to say, "You're talking wrestling here." Yes and no. Because we're not going to talk about, oh, he lost to Obafemi. And, you know, and the one thing I will tell you guys, I don't consider wrestling fake. Now, before I give you the full statement, let me just say, you can jump in and say, "Joe, it is fake." I will tell you it is more predetermined than fake, because there are injuries that do occur where, like, for example, in WWE, they have a symbol where you go like this. That means we have a potential injury here. Get the medics out. So you do have that. Now, Brock Lesnar went on Pat McAfee's show today. He has wrestlers on there. I mean, he runs the gamut of everything. And and we can argue another day about Screaming A. Smith and Pat McAfee getting paid millions upon millions of dollars, and the harder working people are getting laid off. I mean, Carl Ravish, he's technically laid off, but he's still doing baseball. I mean, that's odd. But you have all these situations. But Brock Lesnar announced today on the show that he's officially retired from professional wrestling and for everything else too. Now, I will preface this as well. Even though I don't know the whole story behind it, but there was a sexual assault, sexual this, sexual that lawsuit with Vince McMahon, and Brock Lesnar was considered part of that lawsuit. So that's part of the reason why you didn't see him for such a long time. But I will say this, even though I'm talking about these achievements, and you can say, well, the wrestling ones, it's just, hey, he's he was given these King of the Rings, and he was determined, he was given the title. All right, yeah, but I'm going to read it as the text is written um, on the article here. But now he confirmed that his appearance at SummerSlam on Saturday was the last of his career. Now, he tried to retire in March or April. Now, maybe it was a storyline, but it seemed like with the media, the regular media as well as the wrestling media, this was not planned. Because, oh, by the way, he went to University of Minnesota. He tried out for the Minnesota Vikings. He's from that part of the country. He would actually retire at SummerSlam. And there's all kinds of rumors of, you're not retired yet. You got to do this, and this yet. But he did show up at whatever that PLE was in Italy, but so he admitted he felt like he was done earlier this year in WrestleMania, and the way that he's saying that leads me to believe that was unscripted. Him taking his gloves off because he comes to the ring with the MMA gloves that he wears. And he has took off his shoes, took off his gloves, because that's tradition especially in UFC, where you take your boots off, you take your gloves off, whatever, and then you just leave in the middle of the ring and you walk away. Well, he didn't do it this time, but you could tell on Saturday night that he was done. Well, first of all, they moved it to the last match of the night. They wanted to have it as the first match. They decided to make it the last match, last minute. And you could tell after the match that he went off script again, because he came back to the ring, congratulated and hugged Oba, whether it's script or off script, whatever. Because I think that they were, if I remember correctly, they were ready to go to a commercial, and then they were starting to go through the credits. I was like, oh shit, we got to go back to the ring. But so he removed his boots and gloves in the ring, which is more of a UFC tradition, but he did dabble in UFC for a couple of years. He ultimately opted for one final Hell in a Cell match last weekend in Minneapolis. It's a gimmick match. Nobody can get in, nobody can get out. That sort of thing. So he said on Pat McAfee today, "I'm here today to let the world know I am retired. Saturday was a very emotional day for me. It was kind of weird. When Obafemi slammed me at WrestleMania, I said, I can't do this anymore. I think I'm done. But the business called, and I still had some fuel in the tank." And the thing is, and he's 49 years old. I thought he was older, a couple of years older, but so he had one of the most unique and successful careers in professional sports history. So he was a two-time All-American and two-time Big Ten champion. He won a Division I national championship in wrestling for the University of Minnesota in 2000 before going on to sign a pro wrestling contract. So he did dabble in amateur wrestling as well. He won his first championship in 2002. I guess you can say won, because it was predetermined he'd win. He won 2 Royal Rumbles, won the King of the Ring tournament, won a Money in the Bank ladder match, and the Undertaker streak. He broke that streak. Undertaker had won 21 matches at WrestleMania in a row. You know, yeah, it's predetermined, I know, but I'm just reading the script here. He also even tried out for the Minnesota Vikings. He appeared in several preseason games before he was cut. Then he went to mixed martial arts. He won the UFC heavyweight championship in just his 4th bout against Randy Couture. He won that in 2008. He retired from MMA in 2015. I think he was dabbling in pro wrestling, and he also had health issues as well. But he returned for one final appearance against Mark Hunt at UFC 200 in 2016, and I cannot confirm if Mark has a brother named Michael Hunt. But later in 2016, he was suspended by the Nevada State Athletic Commission for testing positive for banned substances prior to that bout at UFC 200, and he never pursued another MMA contest. And the one thing, and we talked about this with horse racing stuff, and there's positives with drug tests as well in horse racing, but like some of the overages in horse racing are so minute that you wonder, is this really? But there are certain rules that you have to abide by. So Lesnar said today on Pat McAfee, "I was just a farm kid from South Dakota with a big dream, a big heart, and a big ass chip on my shoulder. I'm just grateful to be 49 years old and have been able to do what I did in this lifetime. I thank God and everybody that supported me. I want to say to the little kids, I was a little farm kid with a bunch of lint in my pocket. I had big dreams. I just worked. I think a lot of people at social media platforms see athletes doing things and they leave out the hard work. If kids just stay focused on work and putting time in, good things will happen." And I will say this. I won't deny that he put the work in. I'm not going to deny that. Because you got to put in the work in MMA. You got to make sure you're in shape for wrestling and everything like that. But a lot, but he did have that positive in going into the MMA fight. So, but you do have these issues that he's had, and I mentioned that connection with the Vince McMahon lawsuit. I forget. Is it sexual assault, sexual harassment? It was something sexual involved. So, but for those that want to say, well, what about the Vince McMahon stuff? I recognize it. But he basically had 3 different careers. He had the wrestling career, he had the MMA career, and he also had an attempt at the NFL. But if you were to tell me, oh, he was a bad person because he was part of the, and now mind you, I don't know everything about the whole situation, how he's involved. But I also will not deny the fact that he's somehow involved, no matter how bad it is. Because a lot of times you have to take the good with the bad. And let's say, for example, let's say that Let's say that Pete Rose gets into the Hall of Fame because he's eligible now, but he's got to go through this veteran committee or whatever it is. If he gets in, you get all the good. You get the 4,256 hits or whatever it was. You get the World Series. You get the Charlie Hustle. You get all that. But you get the gambling. You get the sexual assault on a minor. I think those are the right words. And if I'm wrong, but you get the idea. Because the Phillies were supposed to have him in the Wall of Fame. I mean, they did everything that they were supposed to do because Pete Rose is not allowed to be part of a Major League Baseball ceremony. But he was allowed to go onto the field with MLB permission. Now, I think if he wanted to attend a game, he could. But also, you got to remember, but the one thing is, I think we would have been in society a whole lot more forgiving to Pete Rose if he said right away, yes, I bet on baseball. But remember, it took him 14 years to admit it. And when he did admit it, it was for a book so he can make money off of it. He could have made things a whole lot easier on himself, but he didn't. And he was probably still gambling to his final day. Because there was a thing where the first day that they had live sportsbook wagering in Ohio, he was at the sportsbook in Cincinnati placing a wager on his Reds. So tell me how good that would look if you're the MLB commissioner and you have to determine, do we bring him back? Now, I don't know how things got twisted, but a permanent ban turned into a lifetime ban, according to the media, I believe. So, because everybody was saying, oh, he's a lifetime ban, he's dead now. Now, if I was a commissioner, I would have said, well, remember, this is a permanent ban, not a lifetime ban. Let me read you Rule 4.1.36921. It's not lifetime, it's permanent. Permanent means it lasts beyond your lifetime. But truthfully, nothing really lasts. But you get the idea. But I just think that when you look at everything, I'm sorry, the coffee's wearing off, the caffeine's wearing off. I just think they came up with the rule that if he's permanently banned, he can't get in. He can't be on the ballot because they didn't even want to have his name on the ballot. But you're looking at a situation here where you avoided that while he was alive. Now I can't get in there. Now, in the case of Brock Lesnar, now the WWE Hall of Fame, whatever. The UFC Hall of Fame, whatever. But I don't know. Is there an actual brick and mortar UFC Hall of Fame? But yeah, so I just think that not only do you recognize the achievements, even the WWE achievements, not only do you recognize that, you have to recognize the bad stuff as well. And some have more skeletons in their closet than others. But, but for those that would say, for those that say that, hey, he was part of this lawsuit with Vince McMahon. Okay. I acknowledge it. So, yeah. So we'll see what happens with that. So now, just to remind you guys, is we're going longer than I thought we were going to go tonight. Also eligible to be live on Saturday, as I said before. We're looking at 4 different races on Saturday, and like I said a few weeks ago, we are looking at the winning you're in races. So I thought it'd be best to go with the 4 races since they're all graded stakes. I think at least 2 of them grade 1. So, and also close picks winners every day at QandARacing.com. Next couple of days are going to be Saratoga, just to let you know, unless there's like a turf race that is in danger of being washed off the grass, or we get a last minute cancellation like we did last week. But the reason why I bring up Quill's Picks winners is I had a great comment from somebody who saw my article. I don't even know if the guy follows me or not on X, but so earlier today, and I posted it a little bit late because, well, I forgot to put it on X because I'm a dope at times. So I posted my article, hey, I posted my article on X, and then I quote retweeted on the Q&A Racing, Q&A Racing on YouTube. So, and Joe Sophia 26216. Oh, he does follow me. So, okay, we give him a follow back. So he said to me this afternoon, where did Gettysburg Address find that speed? I boxed your 4 picks in the exactas, so I still won. Thanks. Now, I don't know what he put on it, so, I'm not going to shame him if it was a $1, But I admit, when I looked over this race this morning, I had no idea who was going to take the lead. Now, Gettysburg Address, when you look at the program and then dig even further for all the races lifetime, there were races where he was close to the lead. But it's good handicapping by the jockey, the trainer, whomever, that they decided, hey, I'm going for the lead. So, and the one thing I will say, whether it is on Also Eligible, because trust me, I gave you a bit of a nugget with Baby Vino with the Monmouth race, even though I should have been a little bit firmer with, hey, if it rains, this is your horse. But in a roundabout way, I was mentioning Baby Vino. But here's the thing. First of all, I didn't watch the race live because I was doing my 2-hour test with out of the park baseball. So where did he find that speed? I mean, you kind of saw some of it here and there, but he'd be so far back that it's like, so. And this was a horse that was kind of sort of on the Kentucky Derby trail 2 years ago. So he hit the exact thing. I give my top 4 picks, And the one thing I will tell you guys, and this is the perfect example because I say this on Also Eligible mostly every week. If my horse doesn't win, I hope I give enough information that you can put 2 and 2 together. But Gettysburg Address was not one of the 4 picks. I had the 1637, I think, if that was the exact number. And it came in 379. So for $2, you got 49 back. Now, if he had it for $1, I mean, he's basically making his money back. So the one thing I will say is, even if I do not give you the right pick, hopefully I'm giving you guys some nuggets where if I don't have a winning horse in my article, or even, let's say, on Also Eligible, hopefully I'm giving you something where you can run with on your own. And this is the type of reply that I want to have on my social media. Even if I don't hit, I want to make sure that you have as much information as I can give you in a short period of time. So I said, most importantly, congrats on the exacta. One thing I say behind the scenes, and what I said just now, is if I don't hit something, I hope my followers can piece something together. I admit I had a hard time figuring out who would go for the lead. There was nothing obvious to me, but Gettysburg Address ran well first time off the layoff. Actually, I think it was the second time, but he went for the lead. Tired a little bit at the end. Maybe something to look forward to next time out in about a month. But good for him that he hit the exacta using my horses there. And hopefully you guys will check out the site tomorrow as we'll be looking at Saratoga. So I did want to mention that. Now, the last story, and I kind of mentioned it last night, but I needed to read. I needed to read up on this article because it was more than just me watching, me hearing about this. And also, AJ had posted on the Facebook page that that this was announced by Churchill Downs in cooperation with NYRA. And the text is a little smaller here, so I'm taking my glasses off. So Churchill Downs and the New York Racing Association, I'll refer to them as NYRA from here on out, probably. So they announced yesterday the formation of a new 6-race championship series for 3-year-olds that will debut in 2027. The Thoroughbred Championship Series will feature the Kentucky Derby and Belmont Stakes and include a $5 million bonus pool awarded through a season-long point system. Now, just looking at this, just looking at like the initial posts online and also little thing here and there, I was like, So I looked at it and I'm like, this is the end of the Triple Crown, isn't it? Which is kind of ironic because Pimlico and the state of Maryland spent all this money to rebuild Pimlico. and we basically Pimlico, at least that's my opinion, and I know I'm probably wrong. So the series will begin with the Kentucky Derby, and we know that's the first Saturday of May. Next year will be May 1st. Pork Chop, welcome in. Hope you're doing well out there. So the series will begin with the Kentucky Derby, and it will be followed by the Belmont Stakes on June 5th. Notice, no Pimlico. And it may also be that Pimlico does not have a. Yeah, I've heard all about that because I swear if it ain't one area that's getting hit with smoke and fire, it's another. I mean, we had it for a few weeks or for about a week or so, not in the way that you're getting it. I mean, we were getting it all the way from Canada. But yeah, I know because I was actually in Seattle one year pre-pandemic, and I forgot about the wildfires, and I went from the hotel to the convenience store because I was just like, well, first of all, I need to get out of this room for a little bit because I was working on a couple of things, and then I went to the convenience store across the street because I wanted to get maybe a hot dog, I wanted to get a soda, I wanted to do this and that, little things here and there, just get things done. But it was probably when I lived in Bend. I'm thinking. See, the thing is, I've been to Seattle so many times to see my friends that I can't remember. But but I remember one year I'm flying home. I think flying out, I didn't really see it because I wasn't really looking for it. But on the way home, I definitely look for it because I always try to get a window seat, even though it's a pain in the ass when you got to piss. But I ended up pretty much looking straight down because the way that the flight was, you could see the smoke, and it's like wow. But um, but yeah. And the one thing is with me with these fires, I'm always like, well, how exactly do we think this started? Because there's the undeniable fact that the summer is very dry in your part of the world, pretty much the whole left coast. But there's some sick motherfuckers that think it's funny that we just start a fire. Now, there are accidental things that there's a spark up here or there that leads to a fire. That's something like that. But a lot of times because there's no way of knowing in a lot of cases. But I'm not in fire science either, so I don't. I didn't study fire science, but you could, obviously you can tell if a fire's been set or something was. Bingo. Trains do it sometimes. Yeah, things spark. It's a dumbass kid with a firework, or sometimes it's just somebody who's so fucked in the head that fire, fire, fire. I am the great Cornholio. I need TP for my bungle. Come out with your pants down. Yeah, all that stuff. But yeah. And if I had more people on right now, I'm sure somebody would have clipped that. But and that's why you got to come on to twitch.tv/Joe Quills if you're watching on YouTube or X or Facebook, because guess what? You can clip, you can follow, you can subscribe, because yes, I am an affiliate. And you know, you never know what I'm going to say next. It's just that the Howard Stern thing has not worked for me. Now, granted, the Howard Stern thing of you don't know what he's going to see next was not like Howard Stern was in the 80s, the time period that was depicted in the movie Private Parts. So, but going back to the story here, included in this series will be the Matt Winn Stakes, which is in early June at Churchill Downs. The Jim Dandy Stakes, which we just covered last week, that's at Saratoga. That's late July or early August. You have the Travers, which is late August. And there will be a championship race at Churchill in September, which has not yet been named. Dates of those 4 races outside the Triple Crown has not been finalized as of yet. So there's comments here that I'll get to, but the Preakness is not part of the new series. And here's the thing. It may happen over time that, okay, well, since the Preakness is a Triple Crown race and we're getting shit for not including it and possibly killing the Triple Crown, if we, yep, he did it. And that's going to end up on my Facebook Shorts, and I might even put that on TikTok because I have been very limited on TikTok, and you get days where nobody's watching, but I should have more material coming up with playing out of the park baseball. Little goofy things here and there, but yeah. So thank you for doing that and the one thing that I will say, especially those that are watching on the other platforms, you're pretty much free to clip whatever you want. Now, I could always go and later on and decide to remove it, which I haven't done yet. But, you can clip anything. As long, well, have some fun with this because, even if you see the clip, you even see that clip. No, it's not going to work. But that is the Sour Dignified Oryx No Cat clip of the night. I'm stealing that from FKN Commish LB, who calls his clips by whatever Twitch calls them. But, that's going to be posted later tonight. And I can imagine AJ, who's the leader of Q&A Racing, go, oh, dude, Jesus. He's going Beavis and Butthead on me now. But yeah, so you're going to have the 6 races. The Churchill races will be on NBC. Fox will carry the NYRA races because Fox has exclusive rights to the NYRA races for the next few years. And also NYRA is going to have the rights to Del Mar starting next year. Now, horses will earn points based on the designated finishing positions in the 6 races in the series. Now, David O'Rourke, who's the president and CEO of NYRA, said during a late afternoon conference call that the Maryland Jockey Club was not involved in discussions about the new series and emphasized that the initiative is not intended to alter the Triple Crown. But the thing is, over the last couple of years, in the last 2 years, the winner of the Derby did not run into Preakness because the connection said, oh, we'll just wait for the Belmont. So O'Rourke said, "This is a very familiar format to the casual sports fan. It's a point system across the entire season. This builds on top of the Triple Crown or alongside it. It doesn't change anything with it. The Triple Crown is still one of the rarest things in sports." Yeah, it's rare. And I think, even though, if you think about it, if you make this longer, the Triple Crown, in a way, it makes the Triple Crown races um, some will argue it makes it easier. I will also argue it may be tougher to win because not only is the Derby winner getting a little bit of extra rest if you move the dates around to later on, not only that, but also those other horses, like for example, you get Renegade this year who finished second by that much. He would have been in better position in the Preakness if he ran with a later start, because guess what? There's less horses in the race, and with the Kentucky Derby almost always having 20 horses, it's bumper cars. I mean, it's whatever your local highway is at rush hour. I mean, it's all this horse flesh and nowhere to go for the most part, unless you're on the league. But so this was the second conference call. There was an original call with Bill Karstanjian. That ended prematurely when pre-submitted questions were not asked by the moderator. Now, O'Rourke participated in a follow-up call when Karstanjian did not. During the initial call, Karstanjian said, "Each of the 6 races matters. We build new traditions and standards of equine excellence, culminating with the crowning of a champion at the finale of the series to be held in September at Churchill Downs." Now, details of the September championship race has not been announced. They do have a couple of races that they could use. And they think it could be modified in some way. Now, in order to qualify for the championship, you have to be part of 4 of the 6 races, which is good. Now, the point system will be weighted with the Kentucky Derby and Belmont carrying greater point values than the remaining races. So let's say, let's look at the Kentucky Derby, the road to Kentucky Derby. With each passing month or with each passing leg, the points get higher and higher. That's basically the same thing here. Those 2 races, because they're Triple Crown races, they're worth more. So that's why they did that. So there will be a $5 million bonus pool distributed among the top 8 point earners. He also said organizers expect each race in the series to offer a minimum purse of $1 million. Now, the Kentucky Derby is a $5 million race. The Belmont is a $2 million race. And the Travers is $1.25 million, and they could bump that up even more if they wanted to. This year's editions of the Jim Dandy and Matt Wynn were both $500,000, so they'd have to bump that up $500,000. Now, they're expecting to move the Matt Wynn to the first weekend in July, but the problem with that is you're going to be affecting Ellis Park. But, don't worry about that because Ellis Park is also a CDI track, Churchill Downs Incorporated. So it's basically going to be like every 4 or 5 weeks that they have a race. So, but each of the last 2 years, the Kentucky Derby winner bypassed the Preakness. So that trend has fueled discussions about increasing the spacing between races, a topic that could be affected by the introduction of the new championship series. Because also now, the way that it looks, it's like, oh yeah, the Preakness has always been the stepchild of the Triple Crown races because Nobody really wants to go to Baltimore. I mean, Pimco's in a shit area of the city as well. But you also have, um, you also have, a lot of horses that don't want to go back to the Preakness. It's like, oh, we were just there to try to get the Kentucky Derby money, stuff like that. But, it happens. But, um, um, but with that, but even though some people will say, well, you didn't have any, some people say, well, the tradition's no longer there of 2 weeks and then 3 weeks after. But some people argue it's easier, but I will also argue it could be potentially tougher because those second rate horses that we saw, like for example in the Preakness this year, will be going northward, will be going to that went to the Preakness this year. They may be locked out of the Preakness because, oh, by the way, these top horses want to be in this race, and maybe that ends up being part of this series in 28. I mean, I'm just saying, you know, depending on who has the TV rights for the Preakness, because right now that's under negotiation or should be under negotiation. Now, Dan Illman, who's a spokesman for the Maryland Jockey Club, which oversees Maryland racing, which is going to be solely Pimlico next year, said the organization would not comment on the series because we just learned of the announcement. And that was him yesterday saying that. So I think that they have to figure out, well, what are we going to do about this? Because you might have to raise the purse of the Preakness, because I think the purse is $1 million or $1.5 million. So you might have to bump it to 2.5, 3, just to try to lure them into going for the second leg of the Triple Crown. But they have to talk with these other tracks because Pimlico wants to move back a week, which means Belmont would have to move back a week. Now, I'm a firm believer, even though some have argued first Saturday in May, first Saturday in June, first Saturday in July for the 3 Triple Crown races. I would also argue going going Memorial Day, 4th of July, because right now, if you were to ask a common person, when's the Preakness? I guarantee you 95% won't say 2 weeks after the Derby. And nobody will say 5 weeks after the Derby for the Belmont. But if you said Memorial Day, 4th of July, or first Saturday in June, first Saturday in July, when those races are, which would actually get more fans to watch a race or go to your local track as well. So, but I think that even though, you're making it easier on the winning horse, yeah, but you're facing those same horses again. And if you're a fluke Kentucky Derby winner that won at 20, 25, 30, 35 to 1, oh, by the way, you got to face these same horses again, mostly because Pimlico does have 2 winning your in races leading up to the Preakness. So, but you do have different things. You do have different rules for everything. So, but Churchill Downs sought to acquire the intellectual property rights to the Preakness and the Black Eyed Susan for $85 million from First Racing, which is the ownership group that owned the Preakness. That they own Pimlico and Laurel. They sold them off. The state of Maryland exercised its right of first refusal to match the offer and reacquire those rights. So it may be, I mean, some could argue, well, Pimlico or Maryland bought their rights back. We're not making this part of the series. Some could argue that. So, but the media rights for Preakness has expired. NBC and Fox are believed to be competing for the broadcasting rights, with the decision expected in the near future. O'Rourke said having both NBC and Fox involved in televising the series should benefit horse racing. He says one of the most powerful things we have is the ability to use both broadcasters to co-promote, and it's really getting more exposure for the game across the entirety, basically from the spring into the early fall, which is true. And I'm going to say one thing. AJ, who's our lead guy here at Q&A, he's always in contact with Griffin Johnson, who's an influencer who got into horse racing. So you're looking at somebody who's drawing in the younger folk to the racetrack through social media and everything that he does. So you do have that. Then on top of that, free TV. And also, by the way, FanDuel TV, FanDuel Racing, that's going away. Now, I think the betting platform stays, but, just the other stuff will disappear. So you're looking at all that. But now several prominent trainers expressed interest in this new series. Bob Baffert, who's won 17 Triple Crown races, said the championship series is appealing, but would not change how he approaches the Triple Crown. He said, I hope I have a horse good enough, and if I do and I won the Derby, I'd still run in the Preakness because it's part of history, and the classics are still very exciting. But you could argue, and some people will argue this depending, you could argue that, they're trying to get rid of the Preakness here. But who knows? Maybe you have a year where it's like, oh, fuck. But maybe there's enough backlash that, okay, we have to add Pimlico to this, and then we got to adjust dates and things like that. Baffert also believes the series could help maintain fan engagement after the Triple Crown, which is big. Because instead of being honed in on the classics, they'll be honed in on everything else, because usually after the Belmont, they quit watching, which is true. And good friend of mine, Jason Beam, who's the track announcer at Colonial Downs and Tampa Bay Downs, he says on his podcast, the issue isn't getting somebody to come to the track. The issue is getting them to come back. Because, I guarantee you a lot of people say, oh, they just run on Saturdays, right? Different tracks run different days. And the great thing about my Quilts Picks Winners article, which is every day, that there's racing 364 days a year. Technically 365, because Christmas night we do get the racing from Australia, where it would be 26 down there. But part of the article that I've been doing for the last couple of years is, hey, there's racing every day. And, if I get somebody new, or I get the guy from today who might have followed me a while ago and I just followed today, I will say this. I appreciate a comment like that because, hey, my horse didn't win, but, hey, he still won. That's my goal. If I can give you some nugget, you're welcome. Now, Todd Pletcher, he won the Derby twice and he won the Belmont 4 times, also welcomed this concept. He said, I think it's interesting. Anything we can do to promote excitement and have these 3-year-olds run against each other more often and hopefully generate more interest from the fans and create new fans, all for it. And the thing is, horse racing is a contracting sport. I mean, this year alone, we lost Hawthorne in Chicago. We no longer have racing in Chicago somehow. We lost Aqueduct, but but in a way, did we really lose racing in New York because they're just going to be running that at Belmont now, which opens up on September 18th, my birthday. You are going to get an opportunity. So they do have an opportunity to still run. It's just some like the fans that went to Aqueduct because, hey, that's New York City. I don't have to go into the island a little bit. You don't have to go into the island. Even though Queens is part of Long Island, it's the extreme eastern tip, you're still, it's, hey, I'm in my section of New York City. But now Mark Cassie, somebody who we had on one of our shows a couple of years ago, viewed the collaboration between Churchill Downs and NYRA as a significant development. He said, what I like, honestly, is New York and Kentucky working together. That's important because going forward, that's our future, Churchill Downs and NYRA. They can do so much. But, but in a way, you can argue they could be cannibalizing other tracks, like Pimlico. I'll even throw Parks in there because, oh, by the way, a month after the Travers is the Pennsylvania Derby. And Cassie also believes the structure of the series will encourage horses to race more often. And he said, without a doubt, money talks. Yeah, I think we've known that since AC/DC. He said, I like the point system, and I like that because it creates interest and hopes and dreams. So, yeah, so you got, I think there's going to be a ripple effect on this that is not going to be good for some tracks. But but then again, if you're not in for these 6 races, like let's say you only run 2 of 6 in the series, and oh, by the way, there's this $1 million Grade 1 race at Parks. Yeah, I'll run that because I can get Grade 1 and help the breeding and all that. So, but I can argue the good points and the bad points with this because I think Pimlico could be in trouble in terms of the Preakness. I think some other tracks may have some trouble filling races, bigger races. So there are things going, but maybe it does help other things as well because, there could be ripple effects that are good, like, oh, we're breeding more horses this year, that sort of thing. So, but that's the way things are. So, and oh, by the way, I went a lot longer than I planned. I was thinking maybe, I'll be no more than 75 minutes, maybe 90. We're almost at 2 hours. We're at 1:47 tonight. So, but, it is what it is. So, but I do want to say to everybody watching, for example, Pork Chop watching live, the Penguin AZ was watching on YouTube, and anybody who's watching even after the fact, I do appreciate that everybody was watching tonight, and even watching maybe even after the fact, because I do these streams a little bit differently because this particular show, the Joe Quill Show, this has a longer shelf life than Also Eligible does. Like, for example, when the last race of those 4 races run in Also Eligible on Saturday, that shelf life is 0. And the only time you really want to watch it is, man, Joe picked 4 horses and they all finished last. or maybe you want to watch it and be like, hey, Joe picked 3 winners out of 4. Yeah, I'll watch next week. But the thing is, this show has a longer shelf life because you can see what I said about, for example, like for example, the Dodgers are plus 160 to win the World Series. Or you can use the Pimlico statement against me next year or 2 years from now if I'm still streaming. Because, life changes everything. It may be that something in the next year or two comes up that or maybe even next month or 2 months, or maybe even next week. Hey, Joe, you said this. Yeah, I did, but, let's look full context. But that's the thing. Like for example, the TP for my bunghole thing that I did tonight, I was just like going all over the place with Beavis and Butthead. But that's why you should follow me on Twitch, twitch.tv/Joe Quills, to follow and subscribe. I'm also on YouTube at Joe Quills, on X at Q&A Sports Zone, I believe that is. Let me double check that. Yeah, Q&A Sports Zone. And I'm also on the Q&A Sports Zone on Facebook as well. But I do appreciate everybody watching, both live and after the fact, because I am cognizant that this is going to be on the internet forever, or what we think is forever, unless somebody pulls something. But I do appreciate each and every one of you. We will have a show on Thursday, barring anything unforeseen. I know I got the riot act from Mike on Monday because why did you not have a show on Thursday? And I basically said, didn't feel like it. And I told him why. I'm like, yeah, something that was said to me was probably the worst thing said to me, because if I don't feel like doing a show, but I do want to try to grow this, because especially now I'm going to be gaming soon, gaming out of the park baseball, and occasionally have a bench clearing brawl where they're playing the feud, things like that, But I do appreciate everybody, and we'll do it live on Thursday night. Tomorrow, weather permitting, I will be at Constotters up in Northeast Philly. They got a Ozzy and Black Sabbath tribute band playing at Constotters, which I'm interested in seeing, because I don't know if I saw this band last year, or even if they're a first time to the concert series or not. But it is a nonprofit, so as well. So I'm doing good things for the community. So that is it for now. Do appreciate everybody. Come join me Thursday night, 9 o'clock Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, for the Joe Quill Show. And I'll be live on Saturday at 10 a.m. AJ will be here for Also Eligible. We'll be looking at Saratoga. And